Soul was originally a Bleach CC game, one I actually knew around a year in advance to this game's release. And holy shit, was this game's release something. So sit tight, cause I'm about to tell you a little bit about it. Release day of this game though was absolutely hilarious. People had no fucking clue what they were doing, and this is like one of those, oh, there's no handouts. Like there genuinely isn't though. There's no tutorial, there's no like markers telling you where you go. You're genuinely by yourself, which I think made release day of this game just one of the funniest fucking things ever. I think that the mass swarm of players hopping on Type Soul was due to the fact that a Bleach game hasn't seen the face of Roblox in like around a year or so before this game's release. The only one that I can think of from the top of my head is Project Mugetsu, which was honestly a shit show. Like such a shit show that they dropped a 0.00001 or some shit like that % fucking chance race to try to get as much money as possible before the game died. But with 1000 Year Blood War Arc Part 2 coming around, people were genuinely fiending for a Bleach game of any kind to play, and there was none in sight at the time. Bleach fans were so in the dumps that there were still thousands of players on Reaper 2 before this game released, and you know, that speaks for itself. But the millisecond this game dropped, Reaper 2 and Project Mugetsu's player bases dropped to an all-time low. And when I say that, I mean like a number lower than when those games are on shutdown or under maintenance. When I say Bleach fans flocked to Type Soul, I mean it. This was also the first time I can think of that a CC game coming out to the public for free actually had a decent amount of content with it, which was super surprising. And sadly though, has started a trend now of CC games on Roblox releasing their games to the public with almost no changes for it to be a public game, and then surprisingly not doing well. One Piece New Dream. But this game's progression and combat system is what I think really carried it into surviving past release day. The combat system and progression resembles more of NSO games in Deepwoken, so I think that this is what really boosted that flock on release day and helps keep a consistent player base because of those no-life Deepwoken players that just sat on it 24/7. Not the rogue players though, because they're still stuck on that game. The progression in Type Soul has had quite the mixed bag of reviews. You see, you start out as a normal human, but then you have to choose one of 3 factions. These are Hollow, Soul Reaper, and those fucking Quincy's. Progression was mostly the same rinse and repeat of getting quests from a mission board, and those missions consist of you killing Hollows or other NPCs or capturing a point. Then these missions would give you money and an invisible amount of EXP. This EXP would contribute to your rank up, and in total there are around 12 ranks. You start at grade 5 and you end at elite. The lower ranks would consist of you just needing to do those quests from the mission board, but then as you get higher ranked, there'd be more requirements for ranking up. So this would include one quest which is getting grips from a different faction, and then another one which is getting raids, and then another one which is raid grips, that type of stuff. And this is where Type Soul got its iconic name, Jump Soul. And I think the reason is kind of obvious, because players of other factions would absolutely gangbang people of other factions to, get this quest up, get your mission up. But the moment that anybody saw another faction, it was on site. Like it was on site on this game, like Crips and Bloods level of on site. And the moment that one person hears fighting, like 10 other players start flocking to it. So Jump Soul was real. It was the most hilarious shit ever. You'd try to get one grip, you'd find a Quincy, so you'd start boxing them up, and then 10 other Soul Reapers would pull up, or 10 other Quincy's would pull up, and it would just become like a fight, a battle for your life. It's absolutely hilarious, and this brought upon one of the most toxic communities on the face of any Roblox platform, because due to this, it brought a very high anti-other faction propaganda. And what didn't help add to this was the fact that there's something called raids. These raids can be held at different faction servers, so like Waco Mundo, Wandenreich, and then Soul Society. And they'd be held every 40 minutes server time. And you'd go against the people of other factions, and you'd fight to win. These would consist of capturing points, or like last man standing, and gladiators, which was a set of 1v1s against other factions, or 1v1v1s against the other factions. So this brought upon the biggest vendetta against other races. And the way that worked as well was actually absolutely hilarious. Since these raids were in faction servers, factions would choose a specific server to go to. So Soul Reapers would all go to Waco Mundo to do the raids there. And then all the Hollows would go to Wandenreich to do the raids there, and then all the Quincy's would go to Soul Society to do the raids there. So the faction that was getting the raids against them, they'd hate them the most because they'd be getting gripped up while they were in their respective faction area. So all the Quincy's absolutely despised the Hollows, all the Hollows absolutely despised the Soul Reapers, and then all the Soul Reapers absolutely despised the Quincy's. It's some of the funniest shit ever. And then there's also raids in Katakura Town, which is every 1 real world hour. And then if your race won or your faction won, in Katakura Town, there's a Katakura Town shop where you could get items and stuff for the cash that you win. So you'd need a mix of all of these EXP sets to be able to rank up. And then some additional things depending on your race, like Soul Reapers, they need to get Shikai EXP by doing whatever quest is given to them by their Shikai. These are all invisible EXP values, so you wouldn't be able to see them automatically on your screen unless you check up with a doctor and a band in your hand, and then they tell you how close you are to ranking up. But throw all this shit out the window, because if you're a Hollow, then you have to do the most fucking unbearable grinding on the planet. You see, Hollows don't automatically get to the mission board and get to start grinding right away. Now, they're stuck in Waco Mundo, aka Hell itself, and have to go around doing the life-sucking progression of killing other Hollows until they become a Menos, and then more life-sucking progression of killing other Menos until they become an Agichar. And if you choose to go on the journey that I think is the equivalent of the Trail of Fucking Tears, you can do the Vasto Lord progression to try to get Vasto Lord. Once you're any of these things, you can rip off your mask and you become a Narankar, which is where you start doing the basic player progression of, mission boards, doing raids, and getting grips. All that good jazz. But just that Hollow progression at the beginning was some of the most insane shit to do. Hollow players had to face Hell itself. I would much rather freeze 3 times over and get ran over by a motherfucking 8-wheeler 10 times before I progress as a slow ass Hollow. Where a majority of the controversy for the progression came from, though, is the fact that there were cooldowns after every rank. So here, imagine this. It's a Roblox game and it only has 12 levels. Believe it or not, that wouldn't take too long to max out. So the solution that Type Soul had was to make the progression itself take fucking forever, and then slap cooldowns that could be 24 hours before you'd be able to rank up again. This prevented people somewhat from getting max level overnight. And personally, I didn't dislike it too much because people were max around 2 weeks, like the average was max around 2 weeks into the game, which I think was much better than the no lifes maxing out overnight and then everyone else being at a severe disadvantage. And also there's the addition of you being able to stack EXP while your cooldown's on, so when your cooldown runs out, you can't actually rank up instantaneously. So it's not like there's no point to progressing for those hours that you're on cooldown. Alright, I had to make a completely separate category talking about specifically this because of how absolutely fucking ridiculous this was. Basically, this was the end game of Type Soul. Alright, let me start to put this in perspective. First of all, you needed to be max level, which is elite grade, and this would take around a week or 2 weeks on average. So this is just to be able to get the quest. Now, step 1 was winning 180 faction raids. Yes, 180 that you have to win. These would happen around every 40 minutes in a faction server, and there had to be a specific amount of 2 factions just for the raid to even start. This could change because if you get lucky, you can join a raid halfway through or near the end, and instead of having to stick for the entire around 10 minutes that it takes for you to do a raid, you can, get the credit short. Let's say that you're doing around 6 raids an hour, and you're doing this every day for 4 hours. It would still take you just over 7 days, an entire week, to reach 180 raids. And this is just step 1. Yes, step fucking 1. This first step made people absolutely fucking insane, including me. I am genuinely impressed, but also sad at myself that I was able to dump as much time into just doing these brain-numbing raids for so long. This first step was the same among all the races, but it starts getting a little bit different at step 2. So step 2 is the same at the beginning for all races. It's around 400 Hollow kills, 30 elite player grips, and then 6 Bawa Bawa boss kills, which is just some random ass boss. Honestly, this step was the easiest, but Soul Reapers had an additional step to it. They had to go to something called their inner world by talking to Kisuke, and then pick up a random ass sword. And then if you pick up the right one, then you're done with step 2. If you don't, you're on around a 10-minute cooldown. There'd be a little trail that shows you the direction of the right one, but if you pick up the wrong one twice, then you have to get sent back out, and then wait 10 minutes, or grip 2 elite players. If you die though, then you have to do all of stage 2 all over again. It was so stupid. But, you know, you finish this. Let's say you finish this. You finish stage 2. Now you're on to stage 3. This was different among the races. So Soul Reapers had to fight their Bankai, which is whatever their Shikai was, but, you know, it had their Bankai, and it was only using Bankai skills and the Bankai sword or weapon critical. This was so stupid. This took me like 4 days of losing my mind to achieve. I have a clip of me achieving it. I was so happy. I was so happy when I finally did, but I lost my sanity. Oh, no way! Now, hollows, I think, have it the easiest here. They just had to go through a little maze, and there's like 40 hollows there, and it's just all RNG. If you pick the right one, then you get your resurrection. And then for Quincy's, they have to parry lightning bolts for like a minute straight, and if you parry all of them and survive, then you get your Vols standing. This was some of the dumbest grinding ever. Like, some of the dumbest shit ever. It was absolutely ridiculous. Did I complete it? Yes. Do I regret it? Yes. The combat in this game is what I think really helped it flourish. Type Soul has a no-hit stun parry-based combat system. This means that you can walk out of M1s or block in between them to get out of combos. This prevents you from getting one comboed and it feeling like a shitty simulator game. Don't get me wrong though, you still very much do get comboed up in this game. Not every skill has no stun. So the combat could feel a tad bit clunky at times because some skills full stun you while others, aka a majority of combat, just doesn't. But overall, the combat was pretty grounded and would let you survive encounters you otherwise wouldn't be able to survive. I think it was slightly more skill based due to this, if you could say that term. There was also a decent build variety in this game, although you did hate to see 70% of the population go in speed builds. The different races and their abilities led to some unique combinations. The Shikais, Partial Res, and Scrifts all helped make builds a little bit more interesting, with some of these complementing specific builds more than others. There was a stat distribution system, and these stats would give you skills in the stat that you chose to invest in. I personally was a Haka to Soul Reaper. While the combat definitely wasn't perfect and had an insane amount of flaws, such as the imbalancing that could be easily fixed, it was still quite enjoyable. You would run into a wide variety of Shikais and Resurrections instead of seeing the same one 24/7. So lots of encounters were most of the time pretty damn unique. Boy oh boy. The community of Type Soul is what shines so much about the game, in all honesty. You see, this game truly divided factions to absolutely despise each other. Because as I stated earlier, to progress, you had to farm people of other factions, which caused community distaste and community divide among each other. Me and my friends didn't really interact with each other that much when we were progressing in this game because we were of different factions, so we weren't really able to farm together because you'd be getting consistently jumped by people of their faction or your friends getting jumped by people of your faction. And the raids didn't help this, because people were farming raids in another faction's server and it would make a distaste of the faction farming your faction. So it genuinely got ridiculous. But the memes made from it were absolutely hilarious. It came to a point though where it was kind of getting a bit too excessive because people were genuinely making slurs based off of other races and a way to refer to specific factions and races in this game, and it was getting pretty out of hand to the point where it was starting to get enforced by the mod team and staff team, etc., against people using slurs like this in pretty serious ways. So it did get kind of out of hand, but it was genuinely eye-opening that such distaste can be made from a fucking Roblox game. Some of it was funny as hell though. This was one of the banes of this game's entire existence, and it was the absolutely horrendous Robux transactions. It's not like GPO Robux transactions where they're just thrown in your face with 50 quintillion game passes, but the cash was obviously being grabbed. For the first month of the game, one individual Shikai reroll was 800 Robux. That's a whole $10 just for one reroll. And you're probably thinking, okay, well the rates must have been good to get something, good. Well, no. Commons were 99% chance at the time of release, and legendaries were 1%. This pertained to Hollows and Quincy's as well, with their legendaries also being 1%. This shit was absolutely ridiculous, and was genuinely a crime against humanity itself. Did I fall for this crime though? Yes. Did I spend like $100 or more on this shit? Yes. Did I get a legendary? I actually did. But no, the prices for rerolls on this game were dumb as hell. Another example were the last name rerolls, which were an absolutely ridiculous price. I forgot exactly how much they were, but I'm pretty sure it was around 500 for one last name reroll. And all the last names gave you was a slight stat buff. It didn't make or break your builds at all. Needless to say, this game knew what it was trying to get, and the developers definitely got it. But the entire community was up in arms against this for the longest time. And I genuinely do believe it is one of the main reasons that eventually led to Type Soul's downfall. Well, this game did have its flaws. Another one being pretty much its super ass updates that the devs would drop, which ignored the community's cries for help, as well as the fact that there was some, apparently some inner circle scamming going on from like some high rank community members or some shit, and also something to do with scamming on the weapon reroll rates, as well as a leadership change with I think the owner selling the game seemingly to K1, who's actually doing content updates now. Because recently we've gotten a Segunda update, which is fine, it's a decent update. The game has had overall improvements since then though. Ratings have been somewhat adjusted, with legendaries being 3% and way cheaper to reroll. Still super expensive and ridiculous rate, but more acceptable. There has also been an addition of a new clan raid mode, making the once unobtainable content obtainable, along with making some other content that was originally not even worth trying to get, actually worth trying to get. Although the game has significantly lost its player base, I think that this game was gold. And even in the face of all of its challenges and flaws, this game was still something very, very special. Well, alright. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be making some videos. I hope that I can be making some more. I know that I was late to drop in this video because Type Soul's basically gone now. I could have dropped this a while ago. But yeah, it was really fun to make, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it, That's all that really matters. So thank you if you stick to the end of it. Thanks a lot. It means a lot to me, and I do really enjoy making these, and I do hope that I can find the time to make more of them. Enjoy the rest of your day.